Hey guys, this is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings NBA picks for Thursday, January 28th. We broke it down into the stud category, the mid-range category, and a couple value options for you today to give you a couple ideas of a few of the guys that we're looking at. So let's call up the slideshow and talk about some of the guys who we think are in good spots. Obviously, as I said, we're going to be going studs, mid-range, and then value options to give you a couple guys that you should be looking at for tonight. As far as the studs go, there's really two guys that I'm looking to pay up for. At the power forward spot, we got DeMarcus Cousins going up against the New Orleans Pelicans, who are likely going to be without Anthony Davis. The Pelicans are already one of the worst DVPs against opposing big men in the league, and Boogie's been absolutely on fire. He did have a bad game last time out. It was the tail end of a back-to-back after he played 46 minutes in an overtime game the night before. But if you look at basically the last 10 to 12 game logs before that, consistently putting up 55 to 75 fantasy points, has just been an absolute monster. 15, 16, 19 rebound kind of games, 25 to 35 real life points, couple assists, couple steals, couple blocks to add in there just for good measure. I mean, this guy is an absolute force to be reckoned with. So even with, that bad game that he had last time, he's still one of the top options that you can pay up for on the day. The only question you have to ask yourself is whether or not $11,200 is too much to pay for him. Can you still find some value to put a good roster together around him? I actually think you can today and have done so already, but I could also see the case to be made for fading him in a GPP format, thinking that he might be pretty highly owned, and you can build a roster with a lot of solid players at every position as opposed to a, stars and scrubs kind of roster, which you're almost forced to do with a guy that's 11,200. You really got to hit on whatever the cheap options that you put in there with them are. The second guy I want to talk about here is Paul Gasol versus the LA Lakers. Now, Paul Gasol he's basically been on a tear lately. Lakers big man defense is pretty weak, and there's no Mirotic and no Noah for the Bulls. That means that it's going to be more minutes spread around to the guys that are remaining, like Portis and Taj Gibson, and even Paul Gasol, who should play a few more minutes in this situation. Pal's been putting up some really big numbers. His price has come up too. I think he's about 8,700 on DraftKings today, but I do think he's in line for a 45 to 55 point fantasy game here. Again, there's a little bit of a revenge narrative. The Lakers are horrible against big men to begin with. Pal's getting more minutes. He's a bigger part of the offense, and the Lakers do tend to miss a lot of shots, so guys tend to have higher than normal rebounding numbers when they go up against the Lakers. Moving on into the mid-range, guys that are between like $6,000 and $7,000 that are solid options to give you upside that could be in your rosters today. The one I think I like the most is Drew Holiday. He's going to see a bump in production and minutes with no Eric Gordon, likely no Tyreke Evans, and no Anthony Davis as well. So if you take those three guys out of that lineup, there's going to be a lot of extra points to go around. There's going to be a lot of scoring to go around, and there's going to be a lot of basically needing somebody to step up. And if you watch that last game, Holiday went off in that last game. He finally played like 35 minutes. I think he wound up with like 58 fantasy points. But even the games before that, where he was only playing like 28 to 30 minutes, he was still winding up with 35 fantasy points in each of those. At a price of $6,700, I think he's pretty safe for a 5x return and gives you upside if he can get up into the 50 again. If he puts up 50 points again and you don't have him on your roster, it's going to be really hard to get to the top in a small slate like this. The next guy I want to talk about is Danilo Gallinari. Basically, since he's come back from his injury, he's been on fire, putting up big numbers, playing a lot of minutes, and taking a lot of shots for that Denver Nuggets team. He has one of the best DVP matchups in a high-paced game versus Washington. So he's not only paced up, but he also probably has the best matchup in that game that's paced up against Otto Porter, who has been an absolute sieve at the small forward position for the Washington Wizards. Basically, small forwards have been just absolutely dominating the Wizards all season long here. So I think if you take a guy like Gallo, whose price is still reasonable at $7K, put him in a good matchup in a high-paced game that his team's going to be paced up, he's one of the guys that's going to benefit the most from that. And with such a good matchup, I think he could put up a really big number here. Needs about 35 to get your value, maybe 40 or more to really be an upside play for a tournament. And he's been doing that consistently lately, with the exception of 1 or 2 spots. So I really like Gallinari today. I think it's a great spot to roll him out there. Last guy we're going to talk about is Ryan Anderson. Again, if Anthony Davis is out and they don't have Eric Gordon already and Tyreke Evans might also be out, that's going to be a lot of minutes and points that open up for somebody else. And Ryan Anderson's going to be somebody who's out on the floor there a lot and has a chance to pick those up. I like him especially over on DraftKings because he can get you the double-double bonus, especially if he's going to see 30 to 35 minutes like you should in this one. And he also gets you the bonus for hitting three-pointers, which is not something you get out of a lot of guys that play the power forward, position. So if he can get you maybe 15 to 25 real-life points, added into 10 rebounds, hit 2 or 3 threes, he could easily get you 35 to 50 fantasy points and do so at a price of only 6,300. I don't think the matchup is ideal. He very likely may have to guard Boogie Cousins at some point in this game. But again, with all these guys that are injured for New Orleans, especially the guys being high usage, high shot takers, guys that are responsible for a good bulk of the scoring, they're going to need guys to step up. And I really like Drew Holiday and Ryan Anderson, both at, that mid 6,000 range to be two of the guys to do that for you. The last thing I want to talk about today is some potential value options. It seems like Carmelo Anthony's going to be out again here today. So Derek Williams is another guy that you got to be rolling. He's been going off the last couple games without Melo, played 30-plus minutes in 3 of his last 7 games, and has had 42-plus fantasy points in each of the games where he's seen 30 minutes. Without Melo here today, I think he's safe to see another 30 minutes in this one. And I'm not predicting him to get to 42 fantasy points, but at a price of $5,500, he really only needs to get you 33. And like we said, if he's been putting up, if he's been putting up 42 and we can envision him seeing that 30-plus minutes, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to expect him to put up 33 and be a really good value-added type guy. If he gets you to 27, he basically makes value for you. So I think he's safe in cash and GPPs if we're sure that Melo is not going to be playing tonight. Another value guy that I'm looking at in case his, the starter in front of him doesn't play is Corey Joseph. Corey Joseph is the backup point guard for the Toronto Raptors. There's a good chance that Lowry might be out, or if not out, he may be limited here, and that would give Corey Joseph the bump. Now, Joseph's already been playing 25 to 22 to 28 minutes a game and putting up like 20 to 25 fantasy points. So at his price, he's basically been giving you decent value as is. If he's going to see a few more minutes, though, and get more usage and, be on the floor, maybe 25 to 30 minutes instead of 20 to 25, I do think that he's going to give you the upside of close to 30 fantasy points. And at his price, that would be a great value for you to have in your lineups. The last guy I want to talk about is somebody who I really like, although I'm a little bit iffy about him and would only use him in tournaments, and that's Miles Turner. Miles Turner is the backup big man for the Indiana Pacers, was hurt for much of the early part of the season, but even with Jan Mahinmi back in the last game, Turner put up 25 points in only 18 minutes. I just think this guy's too cheap and too talented not to get onto the floor and not to see some minutes. His price dropped back down to $4,600. So at $4,600, if we can get 20 to 25 fantasy points out of him, he's going to be a good upside value-added kind of play and also be one of those cheap guys that you can roll out there that, opens up some room so that you can fit in, paying up for a guy like Boogie Cousins on the day. So those are 3, couple of the guys at each position who I really like. Those are a lot of the guys that are going to be the core of a lot of the teams that I build around. As always, you got to watch for any late injury news, see if anything pops up that you haven't been thinking about, or, some value plays that will open up. We want to make sure we have some, certainty about Carmelo Anthony being out, and we want to make sure we have some certainty about what's going to go on with the Pelicans, whether Tyreek plays or Anthony Davis comes back, or, if they're both out, obviously Drew and Ryan Anderson become great plays. So, you got to make sure you follow that stuff. You got to make sure you know what's going on. But I think that these are some of the solid options that I'm going to be building a lot of my lineups around tonight in both cash and GPP, and then adding in a guy here or there that I need in order to make it all work. So that sums it up for our DraftKings NBA video for Thursday, January 28th. Thank you guys for joining us here at rotocurve.com. And as always, stay classy, DFS.